You have probably heard by now about the revival that's happening down at Asbury University in Kentucky. It's been all over the news. What happened is about a week and a half ago from now, today is February 19th, about a week and a half ago or so on Wednesday, there was a chapel service, a normal chapel service apparently, that never really ended. It's been going, according to my understanding, 24/7. People are just coming to the chapel and they're praying and they're worshiping and they're doing these things, and people are just coming into Wilmore, Kentucky to see exactly what's going on. And of course, anytime anything like this happens, it turns out to be a really big deal because you have people on both sides of it. Some people are saying, you need to watch out for this. This is not of God for whatever reason. And other people are saying, well, this is awesome. This is totally of God. There's no question about it. And so obviously anytime something like this happens, and it's happened like this with everything that you might call a revival or awakening, through history, as far as I can tell, there's going to be people on either side of it. So I am not going to comment myself on what I think about it. And the simple fact is I haven't followed it carefully on purpose, because I know if I started to follow it on purpose, I would develop opinions, and that's not what this video is about. Now, if it was something that was happening in my area and it was really affecting the people in this church in a great way, then I would be responsible for checking it out and, warning about it or encouraging it or whatever. So that is not my point. It's not whether what is going on in Kentucky is a good thing or bad thing, but there's something I think that we can actually learn from this. And it does deal with the question of, is this of God or not? And again, I'm not going to try to answer that question, but this is the question everybody's asking, right? Is this of God? Is not of God? This is awesome. And apparently it's even moving. There are some things happening in, I think, Lee University and now near Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Cedarville, and maybe a couple other places. So some of this is going on all over. So everyone's asking the question, is this real or is it not? But what I want to do is just look at something that we can learn from this, whatever the case is. How do we deal with something like this? How do we look at this and use wisdom to determine whether something like this is of God or not? So I'm going to share with you some thoughts and then kind of an application that all of us can take, regardless of how close or how far we are from Asbury University. And to do this, I want to look at the situation in Acts chapter 5, where what's happened is Jesus has gone back to heaven and his apostles are taking on his work, and they're spreading around and churches are growing and things are happening. And obviously there were people that didn't like it. Okay, in Acts chapter 5, verse 17, what happens is this man named Gamaliel, or Gamaliel, however you want to say it, I'll call him Gamaliel, unless if I just happen to say it differently. But he shows up on the scene and he says, look, let's look at this with wisdom, because the people were saying, well, some are saying these apostles are of God, some are saying they're not of God. Acts chapter 5, verse 17, then the high priest rose up and all those who were with him, which is the sect of the Sadducees, and they were filled with indignation and laid their hands on the apostles and put them in the common prison. But at night, an angel of the Lord opened the prison doors and brought them out and said, go stand in the temple and speak to the people all the words of this life. And when they heard that, they entered into the temple early in the morning and taught. But the high priest and those with him came and called the council together with all the elders of the children of Israel and sent to the prison to have them brought. But when the officers came in, well, I moved that too far, and did not find them in the prison, they returned and reported, saying, indeed, we found the prison shut securely and the guards standing outside before the doors. But when we opened them, we found no one inside. So this is, wow, what's going on? So they found them eventually. Of course, it says, verse 24, now when the high priest, the captain of the temple, and the chief priest heard these things, they wondered what the outcome would be. So one came and told them, saying, look, the men whom you put into prison are standing in the temple and teaching the people. So wait a minute, we put these guys in prison last night, and today they're outside and they're preaching in the temple. What in the world is going on here? Verse 27, when they had brought them and set them before the council, and the high priest asked them, saying, did we not strictly command you not to teach in this name? And look, you have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine and intend to bring this man's blood on us. So what are we going to do with these guys? Because we put them in prison and there they go. But what was Peter's response? But Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men. Then he goes on and he gives them a short little sermonette there. And we pick up again in verse 33. When they heard this, they were furious and plotted to kill them. Then one in the council stood up, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a teacher of the law held in respect by all the people, and commanded them to put the apostles outside for a little while. And he said to the men of Israel, take heed to yourselves what you intend to do regarding these men. For some time ago, Theudas rose up, claiming to be somebody. A number of men, about 400, joined him. He was slain, and all who obeyed him were scattered and came to nothing. After this man, Judas of Galilee, rose up in the days of the census and drew away many people after him. He also perished, and all who obeyed him were dispersed. And now I say to you, keep away from these men and let them alone. For if this plan or this work is of men, it will come to nothing. But if it is of God, you cannot overthrow it, lest you even be found to fight against God. I think that what Gamaliel is sharing with them is very wise wisdom, and it's something that we can use whether we're looking at some revival experience and finding out, whether it's, or trying to determine whether it's of God or not. I think Gamaliel had good wisdom there. Hey, let it alone. If it's of God, you can't do anything about it. If it's not of God, then it's just going to fizzle out on its own. Again, I'm not making any statement about what's going on in Asbury. I haven't followed enough. If I did, I might have some very strong opinions. But Gamaliel had some very wise advice here. If it's of God, it is going to continue. And if it's not of God, it's going to fizzle out. And I think that is the test. I'm not sure we can tell right now. I know some of you might be getting mad. Well, I know this is of God, or I know this is not of God. That's not the point of this. How will we know? What will be the evidence that this is really a work of God? Here's the evidence. The evidence is going to happen in weeks, in months, in years. Are people being changed? I understand right now, this being Sunday, February 19th, I just read this afternoon where they're going to move it off campus because they're saying there's like tens of thousands of people coming to Wilmore, Kentucky, and there's just not room to put everybody there. And the students need to go back to class and things. So, well, wait a minute, they're trying to shut down revival. If it's revival, it's going to continue happening. If it's real, it will continue happening, even if the students go back to class. That's not going to end anything. If it's fake, if it's just people trying to get out of class, just having this big time, worshiping God, whatever, then it's going to go, okay, it's over and it's fine. If it's of God, they are not going to be able to change anything because it's God actually moving in the hearts of these people. And whether they're in a class or a meeting on their own somewhere, having official services or not, isn't going to change that if it's actually a work of God. That is how we are going to know in the long run, whatever side you've taken on this thing, that's how you're going to know. But the real lesson we have here is not so much what's going on down at Asbury, but what about us? I think sometime in our own churches that we can be guilty of the same thing. We can say, wow, we really worship God. How do we know we worship God? Man, the music was great on Sunday. We had a lot of people there, and somebody was lifting their hands in church. Maybe everybody was lifting their hands in church, and so we know, God was moving. We had a revival. That is not what shows a revival. What shows a real revival or awakening is things that happen over a long period of time. Are there truly people coming to know God? Truly, not saying a prayer, not having an emotional experience, but are they really turning and coming to God? And the only way you're going to know that probably is by watching them over a course of time. Are they real? Are they going to stay with it? Are they going to keep on serving God over the long run? What about people who are being, Christians who are already Christians that are being energized and excited? It's not about what's happening in that service right there. It's about, are they really being changed? Are they spending more time with God? Are they turning away from sin, and are they staying away from the sin? That is how you're going to know. That's how we know in our churches. I even just happened to say this morning in our church, it's not about having a big altar call or having a lot of people down front or whatever. That's important to me. I want to see change over a long period of time. That's how you know that God is working in the lives of people. So forget Asbury for right now. Just think about you and think about your own church. How do you know if people are worshiping God? I see this a lot. Oh, wow, we had people, everyone was down front and they're jumping to the music and man, we were worshiping God and lives are being changed. I want to see it in the long run. I want to see people actually turning away from their sin, turning to God and loving people the way that they're supposed to. That is what I want to see. That's how I know if something is really a work of God or not. So there you have my opinion added to the cacophony of voices, probably a little bit different because I'm not taking a stand on this simply because I don't know too much about it. But I think there are lessons that we can learn here in our individual lives. If God is really working, it is going to continue regardless of what we try to do as men. All right. God bless. Take care.